All right, welcome back. This is segment 5 in our series, Why the Warmth of Collectivism is a Lie. So far, we've talked about collectivism through a few different lenses: Pol Pot, Stalin, Mao, and today we're going to a name everybody knows, Hitler. Now, I want to say something right up front because people get weird about this topic online. This segment is not calling everyone Hitler. That's lazy, it's dishonest, and it shuts down conversation. What we are doing is studying patterns, how collectivist thinking works when the collective becomes sacred and the individual becomes expendable. You're seeing a pattern between all of these people we've talked about. And Hitler is important in this series because he shows something people often miss. Total control doesn't always come through class language. Sometimes it comes through nation and race language. So let's get into it. A lot of people hear the word collectivism and they immediately think economics, like socialism versus capitalism. But here's what this series is really about. Who owns the person? Who gets final authority over truth, conscience, family, speech, education, and the future? Hitler's Germany answers that question with chilling clarity. The individual exists for the people. But, and this is the key, the people is defined by the regime, purified by the regime, and enforced by the regime. So the promise is belonging, but the mechanism, again, is control. One of the most revealing Nazi concepts is a word you might not have heard before: Volksgemeinschaft, which basically means the people's community or national community. Now, I may not have said that very well, but anyways, let's listen to how that sounds in terms of what it means. Community, unity, togetherness, shared identity. That's warmth language. It's the kind of language that says, we're done with division, we're going to be one people. But here's the catch. It's not biblical community. It's not neighbor love. It's not fellowship under God. It's a political promise of unity defined by blood, enforced by the state, and protected through exclusion. So, it's warmth for insiders and dehumanization for outsiders. And this is the consistent trick of collectivism. It makes a we so sacred that anyone outside the we becomes less than human. Now, a question people ask is, how did Germany go from normal society to total control? And here's what you need to know. It didn't happen in one day. It happened through consolidation, step by step, until there weren't any independent institutions left. There's a term for that process in Nazi Germany: Gleichschaltung, often translated as coordination. Now again, forgive me for the pronunciation of that, but it means bringing everything into line. Politics, culture, institutions, everything synchronized to serve the regime. And one of the key legal moments in that consolidation was the Enabling Act of 1933. Here's why that matters. It allowed Hitler's government to make laws without the normal parliamentary checks. So even if you don't remember every detail, remember the pattern. Total control often doesn't start with tanks. It starts with laws that say we need this power for stability, for the people, for the emergency, for the future. That's how warmth rhetoric becomes structural power. Here's where the collectivist logic gets deadly. If your whole identity is the people's community, you have to define who belongs. And once you define who belongs, you automatically define who doesn't. And then you begin identifying threats to unity. That's why collectivist systems so often manufacture enemy categories. Because when the mission is sacred, anyone who challenges it becomes immoral. Not merely wrong, but evil. And once people accept that moral framing, they start accepting things they never would have accepted otherwise. Censorship starts to feel like protection. Arrests start to feel like safety. Exclusion starts to feel like defending the community. And that's where toxic empathy, again, can show up in a different form. Because once people are trained to believe that questioning the mission is harm, then enforcement starts to feel compassionate. Now, we have to say what happened next plainly. The outcome of Nazi ideology wasn't just oppression, it was genocide. The Nazi regime murdered 6 million Jewish people in the Holocaust, and the Nazis also targeted many other groups: Roma, people with disabilities, ethnic Poles, Soviet POWs, and others, for persecution and mass killing. This wasn't random chaos. It became industrial, administrative, systemized. And this is where the warmth of collectivism idea gets exposed completely. Because any system that can rationalize mass murder as for the good of the people isn't warmth. It's collectivism perfected. The mission is everything, the state is the instrument, and the individual is disposable. So here's what Hitler adds to our series. Stalin shows the machine through class. The people means the proletariat, and enemies are class enemies. Mao shows the machine through mass campaigns. Truth gets bent to fit the movement, and dissent becomes sabotage. Hitler shows the machine through race and nation. The people means the race, and compassion narrows to insiders while outsiders are dehumanized. Different costume, same structure. The collective becomes sacred. The state becomes ultimate. Dissent becomes treason. Enemies become necessary, and cruelty becomes righteous. So what do we do with this without turning it into some online shouting match? Here's what I'd say. Hitler reminds us that total control doesn't always sell itself as hatred. It often sells itself as unity, safety, national renewal, especially when people are scared economically, stressed, or culturally disoriented. And once people are emotionally primed, fearful, angry, disoriented, it becomes easy to hand over freedoms just this once for the greater good. And that's why Christians have to keep discernment sharp. Because biblical love doesn't require a rival God called the people. Christian warmth doesn't require scapegoats. Christian community doesn't require coercion. The gospel doesn't build unity by eliminating enemies. It builds unity by reconciling enemies. It builds unity by reconciling enemies. Next segment is a big one because it's where people usually object. They say, okay, but what about Denmark? What about Scandinavia? Aren't they socialist and doing great? So next we're going to talk about that. Why Scandinavian countries like Denmark are not quote-unquote true socialist countries in the way people mean it, and why that comparison gets used so often. That's next, Scandinavia and the myth. All right, before we go, we close the show out the way we try to close every show out. If this episode helps you, would you do a few quick things? Follow or subscribe wherever you listen. Leave a review. It genuinely helps people find the show. And share this episode with someone who's hearing these ideas and trying to sort it out. We'll have links and resources in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me here on the show. Next time, Scandinavia, Denmark and the myth. Until then, stay rooted in the Word, stay clear-minded, and we'll see you in the next segment. God bless.